Welcome back, everybody, to another phenomenal interview at the Great Property Meet. And today we have a very special guest. We've got Tej with us, and Tej is a chartered accountant and property investor. Now, I've known Tej for a little while, and he's a really great guy at explaining things in a very simple way. And I thought it would be wonderful to interview Tej to find out really how he balances being a commercial residential property investor, but also a full-time chartered accountant and having a young family. So let's start, Tej. Tell me a little bit about who Tej is, the Tej story, and why we should listen to you and what people can learn from you.
Well, the last part, whether people want to listen to me, I'll leave that up to them to decide. Yes, thanks for the intro, Andrew. I'm a qualified accountant and chartered tax advisor. Run our own firm with my wife together, and that's a practice that's been going for a while now. It's set up by my wife's father, and we've both been in now for a number of years as well. And in addition to that, as well, as you said, invest in commercial property and residential property. Been building a portfolio for a while. So I suppose most importantly, I'm a dad of three, 8, 5, and the little one just turned 1. So he was born just before the very first lockdown in March 2020. So it's been an interesting year, really quite challenging year in some respects as well, but it's been really good, actually. I probably wouldn't change anything, to be honest. In terms of story, I got into property, actually. I've been exposed to it from a very, very young age, actually, because my father had already invested in some property, commercial mainly. So actually, from sort of mid-teens, I was pretty well involved in the commercial property area. I knew a lot of the terms already. But it's one of those things that you kind of know what you know. There's some people who know far more about, say, HMOs and that sort of stuff. Some people know a lot about commercial, and that's sort of where my background was. So yeah, my dad always said, as you're growing up, make sure you invest in property, and sort of acted on that as I've progressed.
So, why was your father suggesting you should invest in property? Was there a reason behind that? What was the sort of motivation there? Because you've gone off and pursued a job as a chartered accountant and tax advisor.
Yeah, so the job and qualifying as an accountant was always, I suppose, the default route, right? Everybody, you go to school, go to college, go to university, get a qualification, and you future-proof yourself, right? You've got something there to be able to do. And to generate cash flow as well. You can't just solely rely on one business, one industry. And the investing in property was really as a means to build wealth, generational wealth. So you kind of look at how can you, one, invest in a way that allows you to have additional income for today, plus also how can you build up something to leave for the future.
Okay, so that's quite wise advice to everybody out there. Do not rely upon one income source, and this isn't about go and get multiple income streams. This is about give yourself a skill, give yourself a base, and use that, and then surplus cash flows that skill or base might throw off to invest in property. So that's a really great little tip there that you've shared with the audience, Tej. So what sort of, balancing a young family, an 8-year-old, 5-year-old, 1-year-old, come on, balancing a young family, a job, running your own accountancy and tax practice, and property investment. And I've known you a little while, and you don't hold back on the property investment side. So, how do you balance all of this off? And, do you have special skills? Do you have an S as Superman on your vest or something?
No, unfortunately not. I suppose, yeah, the thing with the young family as well was that it was never going to be something that the kids weren't ever something that I was going to stand back from. I've always wanted to be involved. From the very first one, I was there at night, changing nappies, feeds, everything that you should do, as a child. They are half me, maybe not the best half is me, but they are half me. So it's been really a case of balancing your time, making sure that there is, when you're with the kids, you make sure you're with the kids. When you're doing, say, the practice stuff, you're doing the practice stuff. When you're assessing an opportunity for investment, you're assessing that, and you've got to be focused on those areas. In terms of other things as well, it's also a case of where you can multitask, do it. One thing I did particularly during lockdown with the baby when he was little, you're walking around with him at 4 a.m. trying to get him to sleep. At the same time, I've got the earphones in, listening to a few YouTube videos of someone talking about commercial to residential conversion. So as well as being focused on one thing, when there is an opportunity to multitask, you've got to take it. And that comes with a degree of planning, because the baby's going to be awake. So you might as well think ahead. Okay, get my phone, get my earphones, know what playlist you want to see or watch or whatever, listen to, and do that. So
your wife has now found out your secret trick why you've got this saintly approach with the baby. It's not that you can zone out to the sound of it crying. You've got your earbuds.
I just can't hear it crying. I just can't hear it crying. Exactly. Yeah. Just
or YouTube.
And eventually he dies himself out. Yeah, that's it. But no, I think that's the main thing, is being organised, being planning ahead of what you're doing. So it's a skill. I guess it's something you first picked up in the corporate world, where rather than just getting to the end of the day, stopping, dropping your pen and walking off, you give yourself 10-15 minutes to think, all right, what's the most important things I need to get done tomorrow, and you list them out. And I'm not a fan of to-do lists. I think the to-do list needs to be kind of enhanced, if you like, by including sort of a section of things that are the most important to do. Because if you make your full list, it's only going to depress you when you don't get through the whole thing, which is inevitable. You're never going to get through the whole thing. So that's one of the important things as well, is making sure that you're organised. You know what you need to get done, and you focus on doing them. Then you move on to the other tasks, and build in some buffer in your time as well. One thing I picked up as well was using 15-minute slots for things. So where you used to book out a meeting for an hour, and you can only fit a few of them in a day, then realistically, if you make them 15 minutes, you're very focused on what you get into, and especially talking to clients, that's more than enough time to really understand where the problem is. You go away, you digest it, while you're doing other things as well, and then you can get back to them as well on that. And it's the same thing when you look at property, I suppose. That first initial look is 15 minutes for me is enough time to pick out the main couple of points, and then decide whether it's swipe left or swipe right, if you like, whether you're going to look at it further.
Yes, yeah, I love the analogy, deal, no deal, swipe left, swipe right. It's something that I personally do. Spend 2 minutes analysing something, it either works or it doesn't work. Don't try and force it, move on and find the nearest low-hanging fruit. I love the fact that you've got that prioritization as well, and the way that you prioritize in terms of recognizing you can't achieve everything in a day. So tell me, how do you sort of do property? What sort of things light your fire? Are you a HMO, a serviced accommodation, or are you following in the family footsteps of commercial property?
It's a mix between commercial and residential, and I never really went down the HMO or serviced accommodation route because it's too hands-on. I do invest with my sister, so we go into projects together and properties together. So we do end up being able to work jointly, or recognizing what our skills are within it. There's some things that she's a lot better at than me. If you want plans drawn out, for example, rough sketches, I could do it. It's just going to take me a very long time to do it. But there's other things that is good as well that I'm much better at. And so it's also knowing kind of where to divide the labor, where to divide the skills, and knowing what you're good at. In terms of the properties that we go for, we did consider HMOs and those kinds of ones first, but they were just too hands-on with having the sort of the other business and a young family. It wasn't going to work. We have invested in commercial property for a while, so we've got a few there, and residential single lets as well. And as well as that, a few simple sort of turnarounds and flips are going through at the moment. So it's a bit of a variety, but we do look for, I suppose when you look at it, you got, property's a whole spectrum, as everybody likes to say. You got the really easy passive stuff, a commercial property with a tenant that sat there for a few years regularly paying their rent, albeit, COVID last year was a bit interesting to some people, all the way through to the service accommodation HMO, which is a lot more hands-on. So I think we're kind of on the spectrum towards more the passive, where you can get a tenant in and they're paying their rent on time regularly each quarter, up to sort of the planning and development side, but not a full-on HMO where we're converting something to an HMO and then letting it out and running it ourselves. We're not in that space, and I understand why people do it, because it's a good cash flow generator. And like you said, you want to have cash flow generation and long-term wealth generation as well.
Yeah. So what you're effectively doing is trying to sort of balance off the needs of today with investment for the future. A little bit of property trading, a little bit of long-term commercial hold and invest.
Exactly.
From the sounds of that strategy. So you touched on very briefly there that you invest with your sister.
Yeah.
Now, I do know your sister, and she's a really phenomenal young lady as well.
Yeah.
What sort of skills do you think your job as an accountant has given you that's really helped you in your property investing career?
That's a good question. I think there's the obvious things that, as an accountant and as a chartered tax advisor, I know about the tax implications of the different types of investments, the different structures of investment. So that's obviously a win, and that definitely helps. And also, number crunching, right? You're an accountant, the old bean counting stereotypes. So, all of that sort of stuff, modeling around it, is all something that comes quite naturally now after, I won't say how many years of experience, because it'll make me sound too old. But there's other things as well. So when you've got a client base, or even in previous life working in the corporate world, where you had to have relationships with banks and people like that, talking to people, getting to know people is important. And as a property business, a lot of it relies on your network, and so that's something that really is transferable as well between the two things. Also, our clients cover a lot of the kinds of services you need for property development as well, or property investment. So that's pretty useful. I suppose the other thing as well is that when you have a range of different types of clients, or you meet new clients all the time, you have to quickly understand their business. And in that respect, being able to understand somebody else's business quickly allows you to sort of be able to see business opportunities in the properties that you're analysing in the same way as well. So that's a good cross-transferable skill as well.
Yeah. Well, I personally find the being able to analyze somebody else's business a really key and important skill. I mean, in commercial property, for example, when you have a tenant, you're effectively underwriting their business, their business plan. And if you can analyze, for argument's sake, what time of day their break-even point is after they've paid your rent, how many sales they need to make. So if it's a Greg's pasty shop, how many pasties do they need to sell to get to that break-even point? Is it reasonable that they can achieve that number of sales? And I think that's a really valuable skill, because that's what I do, is reverse engineer somebody else's business without them actually appreciating I've reverse engineered their business.
Yes, exactly. And you're spot on. I mean, got to look at it from the practice point of view. We had a client who wanted to open, new ice cream shops. They're all the rage, all the dessert parlors and stuff. They wanted to know whether it was worth going ahead with one. And it came down to breaking it down to exactly that, right? This is your cost per ice cream. This is how many people you need to get in through the door. And then it also helped them sort of analyze the locations they were considering. Are there enough people just walking up and down that street that you might get X% of them walking into your dessert parlor to buy an ice cream? So it does help with assessing that, like you said, reversing it the other way, saying, well, all right, this is a potential tenant. Are they going to actually generate the cash flow to be able to cover my rent as well as their own expenses and still be here for the duration of the 3, 5, 10-year lease that they're signing. So yeah, I think you're spot on there. That is absolutely correct. And actually, that's the other thing as well that being an accountant helps you understand is that actually the cash flow of the business is far more important than the profitability of the business, because as long as you've got cash to pay your bills and your liabilities, you can keep trading, and that's often more important than whether you've made a profit or a loss in a year.
Well, we've all seen these big, let's choose internet companies that have started up. They've got a big cash backer to those businesses, but they make hundreds of millions of pounds worth of losses year on year because they're investing for the long game and they've got the cash flow sorted in terms of the backer. But the business is making a loss. So it's a case of accountants can, shall we say, manufacture profits or losses, not in a manipulative way, but through accounting policy choice, can assist you. And the most important thing is the cash flow. It's often described as the lifeblood of the business. No cash flow, no blood, patient dies, business dies.
Exactly that.
So, I mean, Tej, you've mentioned you talk, you're a chartered tax accountant, and I think it would be really beneficial for our audience if we got you back on again and we picked your brains on some of these nutty tax issues. Would you be up for that for our audience?
I would, yeah, that'd be great. I don't think it'd take too long to pick my brains, but we can see how much is in there. That would be good, yeah. I'd like to do that.
Well, for our audience, I mean, let me put you on the spot, and this really is on the spot. We haven't dress rehearsed this at all, and Tej is now sitting there. I can see him start to shake and break out in a cold sweat. Is there any one piece of advice that you would give to our audience to make their life easier as a business from an accounting or from a tax point of view? And maybe the audience, if they like that, will smash that like button for you. They'll hit the share to share it with their mates, and they'll subscribe to come back and watch you on a regular basis on this channel, talking tax and accounting, property and business.
Yeah, sure. Now this better be a good one then. If you need that, if it's got that such importance attached to it, I think. And it sounds silly because actually I'm going to dodge the question on it being accounting or tax related and say that modeling. For me, the most important thing you can do, and I've done this as well, is model your business. And by modeling, I don't mean like posing and taking pictures and putting it out there on social media. I mean like financial modeling, right? So you said cash flow is important, and I have a cash flow model stretching out 3 years. These are the properties we've got. This is the rent that's coming in. This is what I expect to go out. This is what you build in a buffer as well for unknowns. And that's not just 3 columns of year 1, 2, 3. I've got it by month. And what that allows you to do is really see, okay, where are the pinch points? If I'm negotiating a purchase right now, I estimate by this date I need to have the cash in. Okay, if I'm refinancing, I need to make sure that refinance is pushed in time for that purchase, or otherwise I need to give myself enough time before that, if it's looking late, to be able to get a bridge or something. So it's not tax or accounting, but the most important thing anybody can do for their business is model the cash flow in particular. And by doing that, they will understand their business better and how they work, and be able to probably, I would say, optimize what they do in terms of how they spend their time as well. If I've got a purchase coming up potentially in 6 weeks' time, my refinance is looking like it's getting late. Okay, I need to start talking to a bridge lender in 2 weeks' time at the latest, or something like that. So it allows you to do that sort of planning ahead as well. If you really want one on tax or accounting, I would say that the most important thing you can do is actually not shop around for opinions, but speak to an appropriate advisor that has the knowledge of the subject you are in. And that doesn't just mean property. One thing I found, between leaving working in London and starting in the family practice, I took a bit of time out. It was a good time to spend some extra time with the kids before they started school. But what I also did in that time was work with some startups And they were all sorts of different industries. There was a guy who was making robotic arms to help stroke victims recover. There was sort of foreign exchange it was an online platform to exchange loose foreign change at the end of your holiday. So all these sorts of different things, and each person knew their business in a lot of detail, but very few of them had any idea about finance or anything like that. So finding a professional that knows that industry, as well as knowing the general sort of applicability of finance and accounting and tax, that is very important, because it's just as important as having a good planner, a good architect, a good handyman, whatever. It's part of that team that you need to have. So finding someone that knows it is important.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more on that, Tej. And one of the things that I'd sort of chip in at this point and say, I'm looking forward to actually doing some videos with you, because I'm, as the audience are aware, an accountant as well. And the thing that really, really strikes me that most people don't know is, what are the right questions to ask your accountant to get you the right advice, but also more importantly, what questions should the accountant be asking you so that you know they're the right accountant for you and giving you the right advice. Now, I think they're really important points, and we've talked about all sorts of topics on cash flow and should people invest in a company or in their individual name. The Making Tax Digital that's coming up for landlords, and some of the commercial advice and experience that people should have and should get. Now, if everybody stays tuned, I think we're going to cover some, most, all, or other topics.
Yeah, we'll see how popular they are.
Yeah, drop your comments in the box, what you'd like to hear Tej talk about, and we will choose the most popular topics that come up. Tej, phenomenal having you here today. Thank you very much. And I hope everybody's got some value from that. And we'll deep dive some more into the Tej story, and perhaps link that with some of the accounting and tax examples as we go on into future episodes.
Sounds good to me, and thank you for having me. Yeah, look forward to speaking again soon.
Likewise. It's goodbye from me, Andrew.
And goodbye from me, Tej.
Thank you. All the best, everyone. Bye-bye.